From foreign policy to domestic enforcement, President Donald Trump's return to the center of international decision-making is once again reshaping lives far beyond the White House. His words move markets, mobilize troops, embolden agencies, and silence dissent, often without immediate consequence. When lethal force is defended rather than examined, and when threats are issued faster than diplomacy, the question becomes unavoidable. When power goes unchecked, does it remain authority or does it become abuse? And when it does, who pays the price? Governments in standoff or civilians caught in between? Good afternoon and welcome to today's Flash News. I am Star Smart and we'll be right back. Iran is reeling from an escalating crackdown that has already claimed more than 400 lives in just 2 weeks, according to a United States-based human rights organization. The protests, sparked by long-standing grievances over repression, economic hardship, and political exclusion. They have been met with lethal force, mass arrest, and near total information blackout. As details slowly emerge, grieving families have gathered outside Tehran's Karizak Forensic Medical Center, desperately searching for missing relatives among dozens of unidentified bodies. Let's take a look. These scenes have become grim symbols of a state determined to crush dissent before it can consolidate. President Donald Trump says his administration is receiving hourly intelligence reports on the situation and insists the United States stands ready to help Iranian protesters. He has framed the demonstrations as a popular struggle for freedom, saying protesters are not acting to please Washington, but because they are under siege at home.
A boulevard after me, but that's pretty pleasing. But I don't think they're trying to please. I think they just want peace. They want to have freedom. The protesters are after freedom. Iran has not allowed freedom for a long time. And the protesters, I don't think they're trying to plead the peace. They're trying to get somebody to help them. They're under siege. And now it looks like they're being shot, which is a very bad thing.
Well, we'll see that Trump's response has been anything but singular. Alongside expressions of concern, he has warned that Iran is starting to cross a red line, saying this administration is considering very strong options. He has publicly threatened overwhelming military retaliation if Iran targets the United States military or commercial bases, warning Tehran would be hit at levels they've never been hit before. When asked by reporters. Now, Trump claims Iran takes such threats seriously, pointing to past U.S. actions, including the killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani and Islamic State leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi.
They would consider military and commercial bases as legitimate targets if you struck. Are you concerned about...
If they do that, we'll consider things targets they wouldn't believe. If they do that, we will hit them at levels that they've never been hit before. They won't even believe it. I have options that are so strong. So, I mean, if they did that, it'll be met with a very, very powerful force.
I think Iran takes their threats seriously.
I think so. Don't you think so, CNN? Don't you think so? Wouldn't you say that they probably do at this point? After going through it for years with me, being hit, Soleimani, al-Baghdadi, the Iran nuclear threat wiped out. Don't you think? And then you just had Venezuela.
Well, at the same time, Trump says Iran wants to negotiate and that talks are being set up, introducing a contradictory mix of pressure and diplomacy. He also mentioned discussing Starlink access with Elon Musk after being asked by reporters as a way to bypass Iran's ongoing internet shutdown and allow protesters to communicate. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has sharply criticized Trump's rhetoric, warning the threat of military action could embolden extremist actors and put both protesters and security forces at greater risk in an effort to invite foreign intervention. Now, as the death toll rises and foreign pressure intensifies, we see the dilemma becomes stark. Does Trump's posture offer protection, or does it raise the cost of dissent for Iranian already facing the guns of their own state? And when external power speaks so loudly into an internal crisis, who controls the narrative and who pays for it? Away from Iran, we see that Trump is still involved with Venezuela as it once again is caught up in the grip of U.S. economic enforcement. Now, as 5 oil tankers linked to Venezuelan crude have been boarded and seized by the U.S. Coast Guard and other American military branches since early December, the vessels were either transporting Venezuelan oil or en route to load crude that has remained under the United States sanctions imposed during Donald Trump's first term. Now, these actions mark a renewed show of force in Washington's long-running pressure campaign against Caracas, where oil remains the country's primary economic lifeline. By targeting maritime routes, we see that the United States is reinforcing its ability to choke revenue flows even as Venezuela struggles with inflation, poverty, and mass emigration. Trump has described the situation as working out well, claiming that cooperation with Venezuelan leadership is ongoing while simultaneously maintaining the sanctions framework. Well, we'll take a look at this video of ExxonMobil's oil executive reiterating the collaboration with Venezuela.
With respect to Venezuela in particular, we have a very long history in Venezuela. In fact, we first got into Venezuela back in 1940s. We've had our assets seized there twice. And so you can imagine to re-enter a third time would require some pretty significant changes from what we've historically seen here and what is currently the state. If we look at the legal and commercial constructs and frameworks in place today in Venezuela, today it's uninvestable. And so significant changes have to be made to those commercial frameworks, the legal system. There has to be durable investment protections, and there has to be a change to the hydrocarbon laws in the country. We're confident that with this administration and President Trump working hand in hand with the Venezuelan government, that those changes can be put in place. And with respect to the Venezuelan government, that perspective we don't have a view on. We haven't talked to the Venezuelan government, and obviously we have yet to assess the people's perspective with respect to ExxonMobil entering the country.
Well, President Donald Trump also has spoken of meetings with oil companies, expressing dissatisfaction with ExxonMobil's posture, but assuring firms that his administration will provide security guarantees. Trump blamed previous instability on leaders before his presidency, dismissing past policy failures as the work of, in his words, stupid people. Well, politically, Trump has confirmed plans to meet opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, signaling continued U.S. involvement in Venezuela's internal power struggle. For critics, this only reinforces perceptions of Washington shaping outcome while ordinary Venezuelans endure the consequences. The impact on civilians is quite unavoidable. Sanctions constrain oil income, weaken public services, and worsen humanitarian conditions, even as geopolitical negotiations continue at elite levels. The question lingers: is this pressure designed to empower Venezuelans or to outlast them? And when economic warfare tightens, how much suffering is considered acceptable collateral? Well, away from Venezuela, President Donald Trump has renewed his call for the United States to acquire Greenland, framing the move as a strategic necessity in the face of rising Russian and Chinese influence in the Arctic. Trump insists the discussion is about acquisition, not leasing, arguing that Greenland's limited defense capacity makes U.S. control essential. Well, President Donald Trump has gone further, suggesting that NATO considerations would not prove Washington or prevent Washington from acting, raising concerns among allies about sovereignty, consent, and the revival of expansionist logic. But then we'll take a quick listen to this video.
I'm not talking about money for Greenland yet. I might talk about that. But right now, we are going to do something on Greenland, whether they like it or not, because if we don't do it, Russia or China will take over Greenland. And we're not going to have Russia or China as a neighbor. Okay?
Oh, well, heard in clear terms, while Greenland's strategic value, its location, resources, and Arctic access is undisputed, Trump's language has reignited global debate over whether great power competition is eroding long-standing international norms. But then we'll see that there are more questions to Donald Trump, which he responded to. He says he saved NATO by pressuring allies to raise defense spending to 5% of GDP, while openly questioning whether the alliance would come to America's defense if the United States were under threat. Well, he has repeatedly labeled the war in Ukraine Biden's war, and we heard that again, distancing himself from the conflict while claiming to be working towards its end.
I'm the one that saved NATO. I'm the one that got him to pay 5% of GDP. Wait a minute. It was 2%, and they didn't pay. Now they're paying 5%. I'm the one that saved NATO. You wouldn't have NATO if I weren't president.
Would you pull the U.S. out of NATO? Would you consider doing that?
Well, maybe NATO would be upset if I did it. Maybe NATO would save a lot of money. But I like NATO. I just wonder whether or not if we needed NATO, would they be there for us? I'm not sure they would. We spent a lot of money on NATO, and I'm not sure they would.
But what would you say?
Now, what's happened is, as you know, Sleepy Joe Biden gave $350 billion to Ukraine and got nothing for it. I got rare earth back. I got, I think, value back far greater than that. And that's what he should have done. Now, if you look at what's going on with respect to NATO, we have a very good relationship. 5% GDP. And they pay us. We send them military equipment, and they pay us back the full cost of the equipment. The war is, we make money with the war, but I don't even want to talk about that. I want to save the lives. They're Russian and Ukrainian lives. I want to save the lives. That's the only reason I'm doing it. This is Biden's war. Should have never happened. Would have never happened if I were president. This is Biden's war. It's not Trump's war. All I can do is stop it. And I think we're making progress toward stopping it.
Well, Trump's transactional approach to everything is no news, but this is another point that underscores his transactional approach to alliances, casting uncertainty over collective defense at a time when NATO unity remains central to European security and deterrence. And then talking more about Gaza, amid ongoing devastation in Gaza, President Donald Trump announced plans for a board of peace composed of leaders from what he called the world's most important nations. Now, while framed as a diplomatic initiative, few details have been provided regarding authority, enforcement, or inclusion of regional stakeholders. Now, with previous peace efforts repeatedly undermined by violence on the ground, questions remain about whether this board represents a meaningful shift or another symbolic gesture in a conflict where civilians continue to bear the brunt. Away from wars around the globe, we see in the United States concerns over unchecked power have moved sharply into the domestic sphere. President Donald Trump has called for absolute immunity for an ICE officer involved in a fatal shooting, arguing that law enforcement officers should be shielded from prosecution. He described the woman who was killed as very disrespectful and a professional agitator, a characterization echoed by senior Homeland Security officials who defended the officer's action. We see the comments follow growing scrutiny of ICE's overreach, aggression enforcement tactics, and the expanding use of force against civilians, particularly migrants. Trump insists that under his leadership, the border is totally secure and claims crime rates are at historic lows despite linking crime to migrants admitted under previous administrations. Now, but the deeper implications run more than statistics. If lethal force is defended before investigations conclude, where does accountability begin? When immunity becomes policy rather than exception, what protection remains for civilians, especially those without legal or political power? And if the state absolves itself in advance, who is left to seek justice? Well, these are the questions lingering. But then Indonesia and Malaysia have become the first countries to block Elon Musk's AI tool Grok after the digital undressing feature enabled the spread of manipulated, sexualized images of women and even minors. Authorities cited violations of consent, child protection laws, and public decency, marking a decisive intervention against unchecked AI misuse. The ban signaled a growing global willingness to confront technology platforms when innovation outpaces ethical safeguards, raising urgent questions about responsibility, regulation, and harm in the age of artificial intelligence. Across borders and institutions, today's stories point to one single thing: unsettling reality, which is the power being exercised faster than it is being questioned. From streets where protesters are buried before their names are known, to seas where oil routes are enforced by force, to borders where lethal actions are defended outright. Authority is asserting itself with growing confidence and shrinking restraint. What unites these moments is not geography or ideology, but consequence. When decisions are shielded from scrutiny, it is civilians who absorb the impact through fear, loss, displacement, or silence. History has shown that unchecked power does not collapse on its own. It is tested only when accountability is demanded. Institutions hold firm and citizens refuse to look away. Well, the question is then not whether power will continue to shape the world. It always has, but whether it will be compelled to answer to the people living under its weight. Well, I'm Star Smart, and this has been the Flash News. Thank you for staying with us.